Hot Apostle. Help us build the kingdom. Like, share, and subscribe. Good morning. So today's gospel is from Matthew chapter 5. If we're in Matthew chapter 5, what are we in? Anybody know what we're in? You should know this. Sermon on the Mount. That's right. We're in the Sermon on the Mount. It's the very beginning of the sermon. Right after the beginning is the Beatitudes. Jesus goes up the mountain and he begins to teach. And that's chapter 5, verse 1. And then we have the Beatitudes. And then, do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, not to abolish, but to fulfill. And right after he finishes saying this, he launches into, which we didn't hear any of. We didn't hear any of the fulfilling the law. And really what he's doing is he's taking what Moses gave, and he's not eradicating it, he's elevating it. He's elevating and perfecting the law, if you will. And so in the first reading from the book of Deuteronomy, and this is a little bit challenging too, whenever I have a reading like this, where this is a reading from the book of Deuteronomy, Moses spoke to the people and said, "Hear the statutes," that's laws, "and decrees that I am teaching you to observe. Don't forget them, teach them to your children." But we never hear what any of them are, right? It's just, okay, don't, because you gotta go get your own Bible and read that, okay? And the law, Jesus speaks about, do not think that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. When Jesus says the law and the prophets, he's really essentially saying the Old Covenant, the Old Testament. I haven't come to do away with that. I have come to fulfill it and elevate it. And I just give you one example. He talks about, you have heard that it was said, do not kill. But I say to you, do not be angry. And it's like, man, which is harder, not to kill someone or not to be angry at them? It's harder not to be angry, isn't it? But what happens is, what we can do is when we find ourselves offended by somebody or hurt by somebody or taken advantage of by somebody, we can embrace this anger and we can nurse that anger and we can kind of raise that anger, and then that anger becomes a dominant personality characteristic of us that starts to undermine who we are and who we're supposed to be. And Jesus is telling us, it's not only that you're not supposed to kill someone, you can't go around being angry. You have to be transformed by His grace, healed by His grace. And that's not a punishment, that's a gift. I say to people sometimes, who wants to go through life angry and bitter? Raise your hand if you want to go through life angry and bitter. Raise it up high. Because some people choose to do that. And Jesus is essentially telling us that He's going to give us the capacity not to. And the path is going to be forgiveness. He doesn't come to do away with the old. He comes to perfect it. To perfect the old. And he says something else here, that he says, whoever breaks one of the least of the commandments and teaches others to do so. From the book of Deuteronomy, teach your children and your grandchildren. I think about, the great responsibilities that we have to pass on the faith. The great responsibilities, even the discipline of Sunday Mass. Sunday Mass is supposed to be the anchor of our lives, renewing our covenant with God, kind of the focal point of our week. It doesn't matter. We'll go to Mass when we feel like it, right? When it's convenient. I bet one or two of you were taught that at some point. I bet one or two of you have taught others that at some point. And so we pray today that, we don't see the law as a burden, but we see the gift of God's grace as this transforming power. So today, I would encourage you to go read the Sermon on the Mount, the whole thing, because we're not going to keep reading it tomorrow. It's not going to be the reading. The reading tomorrow is not the Sermon on the Mount. So maybe read the Sermon on the Mount, and then we will hear these words. Do not forget. Don't forget. Don't forget who you are, who you were created to be. Don't forget your God. Don't forget the love of God. Do not forget. And remind your children and your grandchildren and your friends and your neighbors who they are, who they were created to be.